Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion, and today we're looking at some patch notes. That's right, so with the new DLC comes a new patch, as always. Oh yeah, let's see the splash screen. Yay, dinosaurs and whatnot. This is the Empire Undivided update, which is fun, because, you know, the whole Undivided thing teases at, chaos, with the whole chaos divided, undivided, using the same language. I know, it's kind of a nothing point, but I do like the dedication to the language of Warhammer. It's fun. So yeah. So obviously this comes with the Empire rework, but we're not going to be talking about that. This is just going to be the multiplayer stuff. Okay. I might do another video about the campaign stuff, but I'd kind of rather just show you in a campaign at some point, because I do want to play the Empire rework campaign, which I know is definitely a headline thing. So I might just go ahead and play that, and you can see it like live. But yeah, unit stats, that's something that's harder just to show you in a hurry, see what all the units are like. So anyway, first off, the big thing here, multiplayer unit caps. So unit caps have been added and changed a hell of a lot. There were some unit caps in ladder, but like barely any in quick battles. Just everything had like a max of 6, and that was about it. But no, so they've changed a heck of a lot, which is very cool. So, in an effort to build a fairer playing field in multiplayer battles across the many playable factions, we've introduced a flexible new cross-category cap system. This has been designed with the following aims: limiting multiple variants of the same rare unit across different categories, e.g. core roster, Dreadsaurians and their regiments' renowned counterparts. Limiting multiple variants of the same unit within the same core roster, e.g. Stegodon unit variants and Stegodon character mounts. So, basically what it's saying is it's using it's pretty much using the tournament limits that everyone uses. So, like the Ever-Chosen tournament, it's pretty much those army caps. So there's a maximum of 6 Parthian shot units, I think it is, and you can have a max of 5 of each of the core units. Rare units, you're limited to like 3, but certain other units have other caps. Regiments round count as their base unit in that unit cap, and there's a load of different things like that, but it really limits stuff in a good way, so it stops just horrible cheese armies where they've just got like just a blob of single entity units that just charge in, attack one unit and move to the next, because it's disgusting. Those armies suck, and they're not fun, they're not thematic, they're just sort of nonsense. So you can still do this stuff in custom battles, right? In custom battles you can still play however the hell you want, but there is actually a tick box that you can turn on the unit cap. So if you're going into custom battle to build an army for multiplayer, you can have those caps on, so you know that army will be okay, which is really cool. I really like that. Also, if you guys are practicing with friends, you can have it with unit caps on, so you can still play. You can play with each other, knowing that you're sort of abiding by those caps, which I think is really interesting. I think that's a nice thing to have, and it's been sorely needed, I think. So, really nice, really nice. And, yeah, it's really good, and it'll tell you what the caps are when you hover over each unit. It'll say what categories they're in, and what the caps are for those things, so you can properly plan your army, which is awesome. So, I absolutely love that. I love that. I think this is a huge thing that needed to be done a long time ago. So this is a huge step into making multiplayer a sort of a more friendly environment, I think. It stops a new player from going on ladder and immediately meeting some horrible cancerous build. They're going to be going up against sort of more balanced armies, and they're going to be making more balanced armies themselves, because it's going to force variety out of them, which is good. Variety is definitely useful. So I love it. I think this is a beautiful change. Right. Onto the unit stats changes, of which there are loads. Where are they? There's a ridiculous amount of stuff in this patch. I mean, just look at this. I mean, look at it. Look. So it starts up here, and it goes all the way down here. See why I'm only doing balance changes? You see why I'm only doing that with this video? Yep. So the balance changes. Okay, Elizabeth Empire, Dark House of Tonia. Here we go. Beastmen. So, first off, Beast Lords on foot are going to be a bit cheaper, because why would you ever bring them on foot, right? There's always going to be on a chariot, let's be honest. So, it makes sense just to make them a lot cheaper. That way, you've got a cheaper alternative if you just you need a Lord, obviously, but you're not relying on it for anything. So, I like that's cheaper. Kazrak is also cheaper to match. Morga is slightly cheaper as well, which I think makes sense. Morga, I don't think is as powerful as he once was. There's so many, like, big single model things that can just knock him over, and he can't really necessarily get a lot done. He's more of a support thing. The fact he's got those summons and the rest of it, he's not really going to go toe-to-toe with anyone, so he shouldn't be too expensive. So I like that. Gorbel Slightly faster, which I like, and more leadership, because they are prone to breaking, like, super quickly. So it's nice the Gorbals got some more love. It's been getting a bit of love each patch recently, and I think it's good. It's getting to a really, like, solid place where he fills a nice niche. Because right now, you're usually better off with just bringing Minotaurs, or just a ton of Razor Gores for the same price, you know. It's, he's not really worthwhile yet. But this, I think, will have a pretty big effect on it. So, Minotaurs. All Minotaurs are also slightly quicker, and they can now hide in forests. Weird that they couldn't. I know they're monstrous infantry, and a lot of monstrous infantry can't hide in forests, but they're Minotaurs. You know, they hang out in forests and ambush caravans and things. You know, that's their thing. So it makes sense. Also, a bit more leadership, because again, they do break very quickly. It is nice to have them stay and fight for a bit longer, because then they can actually do the damage. It's fair enough having a unit that does a ton of damage, but it has to actually attack things. It can't just run away, and that's kind of what Minotaurs do these days. But Minotaurs have lost some, standard Minotaurs that is, they've lost some melee attack, but they've been given a huge bonus versus infantry, so now we're seeing more specialized uses for these things, which is brilliant, but that has come with a slight cost upgrade. But of course they are quicker now, they have more leadership, so, you know, you've got to take these buffs into account, and that plus 18 versus infantry is gigantic, so we might actually see these quite a lot against sort of infantry heavy factions, which I think is brilliant. Also, Minotaurs with great weapons have better splash damage, which is really nice, and slightly higher splash attack power, so these guys will swing a lot more. I really like that. So, yeah, with great weapons, we obviously got their armor piercing, they got their anti-large already. So this is kind of nice. So it means they will do a little bit better when they're wading through, like, a lot of chaff. Because a lot of the time, if they're attacking something expensive, it'll be the chaff surrounding the thing expensive that'll whittle them down. Because they just can't get them out of the way. So more splash attacks means that they'll be knocking things over more and can focus on what they need to. So again, love that. Butcher's a Kalkan Guard. They're also quicker, can hide in forests. They've had more melee attack but lower defense, which makes a lot of sense. They regenerate already, so having as big melee defense as they did was mental. That was totally crazy. Also, Chaos Spawn have got a reduction in cost, which I don't think they needed, actually. I think they were great. They were an unbreakable unit in a roster of very low leadership units, right, for the Beastmen. So having Chaos Spawn cheaper, I think, is kind of silly, because I like to think you have to pay to fill a gap in the roster. But hey, this will mean they get brought more, and I like that, because I do like them. Also, Giants are cheaper. I think they're 1,500 now, which is amazing. I love that, because Giants I think are brilliant, but obviously because they have no armor, they're weak to cheap units, and that's a problem. They're very good at fighting, like, you know, toe-to-toe against very expensive stuff, because they hit so goddamn hard, but they can just get whittled down at range, which is a bit of a problem. So I like they're a bit cheaper. Ungor Spearmen, they all have Vanguard deployment and Stalk. Very nice. See, they've got Stalk now. I like that a lot. So a little bit of extra health, a little bit added cost, though, for this Ungor Spearman, which is interesting. Also destroys the Drakwold, though similar thing here, more melee attack, less melee defense. And this is actually, every regiment renowned will probably have these same stats, because they've changed how chevrons work to favor melee attack rather than melee defense. So you'll see chevrons will basically, it'll be more killy, the units. It should speed things up rather than slowing things down as it does now. So I think that's really cool. I have more Slibe, again, because it's got chevrons, right? You'll see this with all of the regiments renown. Sons of Goros, though, a little bit cheaper, which I like. I like that a lot. Because, yeah, they were, like, although, again, they are filling a niche because they got magic damage, but still, it's nice to see they're a bit cheaper, because I think they were tough to bring, I think. They were a bit too expensive in my book. Blackhorn's Ravagers, same kind of thing. More melee attack, less defense. Bretonia now. So, Alberic on foot, cheaper, because, yeah, foot lords are rubbish, so they should be a lot cheaper. And he's also a bit cheaper on the Barded Warhorse. Leonka, same thing. The Standard Lord, same thing. Paladin, same thing. Prophetess, actually more expensive on the Warhorse, which is interesting, and slightly more expensive on the Barded Warhorse, which is novel. I'm not sure whether Prophetess is suddenly more expensive. Damsels, also more expensive on mounts, so fair enough. Green Knight, Sacred Guardian, is now a free, non-optional ability in custom battles. Brilliant. Brilliant. I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. That's the Sacred Guardian. That is the one that gives him... Actually, which one is that? That one that doesn't give him Guardian, does it? Is that the one that heals him in trees? You know, I can't remember. I don't bring the Green Knight enough, because he's so rarely worth bringing that I can't remember all of his abilities on the top of his head. But it's good that he's got ability has been made free. I mean, I like that. It means you're just paying for a bit less. It essentially makes him cheaper for more things. So that's good. He is too expensive. Grail Guardians. More melee attack and slightly higher AP, which is nice. Pegasus Knights, extra leadership, and tweaked animations for charging into land units to improve charges. This is brilliant. This is really good. I need to see how this works exactly. But their charges, they've gone through a few iterations. I think you guys remember in Warhammer 1, they would all just focus exactly on like a single model, and you could kill Kolek in a single charge if you had like 2 or 3 units, because they would all go straight at him. And then they changed it completely, that they stay in formation so rigidly that a couple of units will hit the thing you're aiming for, and the rest will just carry on the same trajectory and land 50 feet away amongst a bunch of halberds and die. It was really annoying. So they did get slightly more narrow, their charges, in a couple patches ago, and it looks like they might have done that again, which is nice. I like that. Maybe I'll have a bit more control over them, and they won't land amongst halberds quite so often. So I like that. Same thing happening for the Royal Pegasus Knights, and extra leadership too, because, yeah, especially the way they landed, they used to get attacked in the flanks and the rear and everywhere, because they were always surrounded, because they always land in the middle of stuff in various different places. So that really screwed them over as well, so the extra leadership should help combat that too. Defends the Fleur-de-Lis, yeah, it's just all the regiments renown. Same deal. More melee attack, less melee defense. Also, this is really interesting. The Blessed Field Trebuchet, the projectile explosions ignore allies. How cool is that? So, yeah, I guess the Blessing of the Lady isn't going to kill any loyal Bretonians, is it? But it means that this is an artillery piece that can be used sort of long term, because they're not the most accurate things, but if they're not going to hurt your own guys, you can just have them fire into front lines to support, which I think is really cool. I think that's a really nice touch. That's, I like it. I like it a lot. So here, Dark Elves, Crone Hellebrand, cheaper on foot. As you can see, Footlords, just cheaper, because Footlords just get knocked over and never get anything done. No one ever brings stuff on foot, because they're not worth it. So having all of the Footlords cheaper, or, Lords on foot cheaper, makes a lot of sense. It's incentive to maybe bring them on foot, because they are a lot worse than if you put them on mount. So this is great, just across the board, that's what's happening. So, now here, Morathi, Silhouette now uses large entity ground stat effect group. Cool. I've been hoping that would change. I don't know what the hell that means. I really don't. I really have no idea what that is supposed to mean at all. Maybe it's when Morathi was on the ground, she counted as a small target rather than a large target? I mean, that sounds weird. I don't know. I have no idea what that's in relation to. If any of you guys know what this is referring to, then please do let me know, because I really don't get that. It seems weird to me. It's not very obvious by the words that they've used, which, fair enough. So, Sorceress, Dark Steed, a little bit more expensive. Cold One, a little bit more expensive. Supreme Sorceress is on mount, again, a little bit more expensive, which is the same as making the, them cheaper on foot in relation to their mounted, right? So it's the same thing, but clearly Sorceresses and Supreme Sorceresses, they figured, need to be a little bit more expensive. So they've just added that to the mounts rather than lowering the price of the base, which, same kind of effect, right? Foot stuff is cheaper in relation to them mounted. Death Hag, again, cheaper. Yeah, all of them. It's the same across the board. Raven Heralds, though, can no longer hide in forest. What? Raven Heralds, they're in the sky, not in a forest, so that's weird. So fair enough. Also, extra health per entity. Better melee attack, lower melee defense. And again, that's just standard Regiment Renown stuff. But, for high chevrons. But yeah, that plus 16 health per entity, I think that's going to go a long way, because it's so common just to whittle them down with a couple of Spirit Leeches. Like a couple of Spirit Leeches and half of them are dead. And that's a great way to deal with them. So now if they can be a little bit more resilient to that, you've got to make more of a concerted effort to combat something like the Raven Heralds. So I like that. I like that a lot. Because they are ruddy expensive. They're a very niche unit. So, Cold One Chariots. A little bit more expensive. That upsets me a bit. Honestly. But they are pretty cost effective. I bring them quite often. So I can see where they're coming from there, especially now, because I don't think their price changed when Primal Fury changed. So it used to be that they rampaged at half health, and now they're doing it at 20% health. So you've got to really mess up with them before they rampage. But at half health, like one Spirit Leech, they'd rampage and then get stuck fighting halberds till they die, right? But now, because it was 20% and they stayed the same price, they were very cost effective all of a sudden. So Knights of the Ebon Claw, same vibe here. For all of these, it's all the same. except here, Reaper Bolt Thrower multi-shot has slightly better bonus versus infantry per projectile. So the multi-shot should be the better thing to use now. For ages, it just seemed multi-shot, you were better off using the standard shot because anything it hit, it would kill. So you could kill models in enemy units, even if it's infantry. So if the multi-shot can actually do more damage in a cluster, it will hopefully make it worthwhile, which I think is great. I think that's good. I think that's a nice change. So, dwarves, the ethereal dwarf heroes. They have a better reaction ignore hit chance and better knock interrupt ignore chance. And they're cheaper, which is great, because usually if you go with Clan Angrand, they're just going to bring Spirit Leech or something. They're going to just maybe not expect you to bring Ethereal Lords, but they know that it's a possibility, so they're just going to bring a counter to it. You know, something like Spirit Leech is super cheap and you can kill them in a couple hits, so you don't have to worry about it. So they should be a bit cheaper, because they are just such a gamble, you know. But this is really nice, though. Just it means every time they get hit by something big, they have less chance to get knocked over, so they can carry on fighting. So they can't get cycle charged constantly. So I love that. Lords, again, better ignore hit chance, more mass as well, more melee attack, less cost, less splash attack targets though, which is a bit of a shame, but slightly more AP. So Lords had a few little tweaks there. Rune Lord, again, more chances to, you know, ignore being knocked over, more mass, less melee defense, but less cost for the Rune Lord, which is nice to see. So yeah, cool. Rune Lord, Anvil of Doom, now uses large entity ground stat effect group. Like, what is that? What is that? -5 melee defense and slightly cheaper as well. Runesmith, same things. It just seems to be all the dwarf heroes have gone through the same kind of iteration. They're just not going to get knocked over so much. But this is quite impressive. Plus 600 mass for Grombrindle. I don't know if he was lacking, like sort of lagging behind everyone else or what, but that seems weird. But he is 100 cost cheaper, which is pretty significant. So we might see more of Grombrindle, because he hasn't been brought a lot. He's usually not the best pick. Belagar, better melee defense, so he's going to be even tankier, but he is staying at the same cost, I think. Nope, he's cheaper as well. Wow. But less splash damage. So, yeah, they're basically means all of these guys are going to be a lot more survivable, a lot less likely to get knocked over and, you know, exploited like that, just constantly bowled over by chariots and, you know, dragons or whatever. And they're going to take less damage, and I think that's very dwarfy. And they shouldn't have huge splash damage, really, because they're more about surviving than killing. That's the dwarven way, so I like that. So, Thorgrim as well, cheaper, more AP. Flame Cannon, more expensive, but more damage. Quite a lot more damage. Projectile calibration area has gone down, which I think is the... I think that's a sort of margin for error. Where it'll aim at a target and then it can go off in different directions. So I think that means that it'll sort of land closer to where you're aiming now, I'm pretty sure. And also, plus 20 projectile expiry range. What? Yes? No idea. I guess that's if you're attacking something that's running away from you, but it is in range, and the projectile goes beyond its range. Because, you know, that can happen sometimes. So I guess it goes a bit further before the projectile just fizzes into nothing. So fair enough. I like that. Organ Gun. Better calibration distance and lower projectile calibration area. So again, I think that just means more accuracy, essentially. Goblobber. Extra melee attack and less defense. Because of the chevrons, right? This isn't necessary changes. That's just how chevrons have been overhauled. Anyway, Dragonback Slayers, same kind of thing. Miners, just get a bit more melee attack, fair enough. Mines with blasting charges, more melee attack, but they're also more expensive, which I get. Mines with blasting charges are in almost every dwarf army, because the blasting charges are so useful. You know, just any cheap infantry, you can halve the health off before it gets into combat, and that can really swing things rather well for you. Stop you getting overwhelmed. So yeah, Bugsman's Rangers, plus 50 cost, but more AP and projectile damage, but bigger reload time. So less time between, you know, more time between shots, but it will do more damage. So yeah, fair enough. But Bugmans, they're just such a great unit. They're brought all the time, and yeah, so probably they should be more expensive because they are picked constantly. So yeah, they probably are performing a little bit too well. So the extra cost, fair enough. Rangers, slightly more expensive too, and more AP, so similar thing. It's going to take them slightly longer time to reload, but more damage in general. Quarrelers get similar similar thing as well. And quarrels with great weapons actually get slightly more melee attack as well, which I guess fair enough. Because, I mean, it's one of those units, I never bring a multiplayer, because if they're in melee, then you've messed up already, right? So the idea of having them good in melee is kind of their thing. Like, yeah, they're armor piercing, but in melee, and if they're in melee, you've done your job wrong, because they shouldn't be in melee, because they're ranged units, right? They're not as good in melee as, like, other equivalent units, and you're paying for melee stats and missile stats, so you can't do both at the same time, which means you're paying too much for either, right? So anyway, yeah, more melee attack, fair enough. I'm not sure I'll ever see this, if I'm totally honest. Ekram Miners, again, yeah, this is all the same stuff. All the Regiments Renown getting those same kind of bonuses, but Gyrocops with Brimstone guns now have plus 15 bonus versus large. That I like a lot. That's very nice, because that is kind of their role, but it just means they can be a little bit better at killing things like chariots, and things that can exploit dwarves. So I think the dwarves will be slightly less exploitable, and they have a nice, a slightly better way to stop things like chariots and sort of cavalry cycle charging, exploiting them a bit. So I like that. I like that a lot. So the Empire. Karl Franz on foot, way, way cheaper. In fact, he's cheaper across the board, which is very impressive. Toddy. Oh, cool. Yeah, Toddy here. Boris Todbringer, cheaper across the board. Gelt, cheaper across the board. Voltmar, cheaper across the board. Archlector, cheaper. Empire General, cheaper. Just all of the lords are cheaper, which is crazy. Warrior Priest, cheaper. Oh, though the Warrior Priest is a bit more expensive on a Warhorse, which is unusual. Oh, and so, sorry, a little bit more expensive on Warhorse, and Empire Wizards are on a Warhorse too, and Barded Warhorses. So, alright, cool. Again, it's just making the foot stuff cheaper in comparison. It's the usual thing. But yeah, all of the lords cheaper, which is pretty crazy, because Karl Franz is an absolute monster, so for him to be so much cheaper, although not cheaper on Deathclaw, I just noticed, not cheaper on Deathclaw. He's just far, far cheaper on foot, so fair enough. Right, Amber Wizard. More health on Ultra. Oh, okay. It's higher unit size, clearly. He didn't have as much health as Griffin should have. So fair enough. That seems like more of a bug fix, I reckon. Anyway, Crossbowmen. Extra cost, because there are archers now as the cheaper ranged unit. So it makes sense that crossbowmen are a little bit more expensive, but they actually do a lot more damage here. They do more AP and projectile damage, but they do have the higher reload time. So there is that, but they will do more AP. And certainly far more AP in relation to archers. So if you want a more sort of split the difference between sort of AP and non-AP ranged unit, you know, jack of all trades, crossbowmen's probably the way to go. They have better range than archers as well, by the way. So yeah, so that's kind of cool. So more AP for them. Sunmaker, yep, just melee attack and defense tweaks. Yep. Steam Tank though, plus 2 melee attack. I mean, that's something, I guess. Steam Tank, still a bit silly, a unit, but it's something. Hellblaster Volley Gun is cheaper, and it does more damage. I love that. I love that a lot, because Hellblaster Volley Guns are a risky pick, because they don't have great range, so they can get sniped out by things. Other artillery will just aim for them first. So, yeah. So make them a bit cheaper, and make them a bit more worthwhile for the cost. Hellstorm rocket batteries will do more explosion damage and more AP, which again, brilliant. The standard Hellstorm rocket batteries suck. The Sunmaker is just so much better than them. Although the Sunmaker got the exact same treatment. I'd love to see the Hellstorm rocket battery get something to make them a bit better, because I think it's mostly the accuracy is so poor on the Hellstorm rocket battery. Like the Sunmaker, because it's got the chevrons, is more accurate, and it also shoots twice as many shots. I mean, that's its thing. That's why it's a Regiment Renown. I get that. But it is more than twice as good as a Hellstorm rocket battery, because it's so much more accurate. And it's not more than twice the cost, right? So, yeah, it's silly. In my book, anyway. I just don't think they quite add up. But anyway, Demigryph Knights are slightly cheaper. So that's nice, because normal Demigryphs we haven't really seen, you know. We don't see them often. You know, it's Demigryphs with halberds or nothing. So standard Demigryph Knights to get a bit of a cost reduction, I think, is a nice change. Outriders and Pistoliers, they had a bug with their rate of fire being capped because reloading transitions take forever or something. So that's changed. So they're actually going to be shooting quicker now. So they should actually perform a lot better than they did. So that's cool. Greenskins now. My word, there's a lot to go through, isn't there? Grim Gore, increased acceleration, deceleration. Alright, cool. Also, better hit reaction ignore chance, so he's not going to get knocked down as much, basically, and he's cheaper. So that's something good for Grim Gore. Night Goblin War Boss, cheaper. Skarsnik, cheaper. Azag, cheaper. All on foot. All that stuff on foot. Alt Boss on a boar as well. Great Shaman on Great Wolf a bit cheaper. And then it just seems to be all of the Regiment Renown usual tweaks. So plus melee attack, lower main defense. Because the Chevrons, Doom Diver Catapults are 50 quid more expensive. And I get that. They've really been in vogue lately. People have been bringing Doom Diver Catapults constantly lately. They're just such a great utility to have, so it makes sense they're a little bit more expensive because they're definitely performing above expectations. Also, a Giant, cheaper. Giants across the board are cheaper. Wow, that was quick for greenskins. A lot for greenskins. High Elves, a Lariel, cheaper on foot. It's the same thing here, just steeds are more expensive than people on foot. Everyone on foot is cheaper, right? Just across the board, everything on foot is cheaper. Or it's cheaper in relation to, you know, being mounted. As you can see with the mage being slightly more expensive, which fair enough. Dragon Princes, less mass. I'm not sure how 100 mass is going to affect them, really. I think they're still going to have plenty of mass. I think they'll still be able to block in sort of single model entities and deal with them. But maybe it just means they won't be able to run through infantry quite so well. They might, you know, a few might get stuck in there more often. So you'll have to actually cycle charge a bit more cleverly. Charge them in. And make sure you charge them out the same direction, rather than trying to push them through sort of medium or heavy infantry. So, yeah, fair enough. It just means it's going to take a bit more skill to use them. They're already killing machines. Fireborn got the similar thing going, and of course the Chevron changes. So, yeah, Chevron changes, Chevron changes, Chevron changes, Chevrons. Oh, actually, the grey is slightly cheaper. That's nice. I like that. The grey aren't picked that often. They aren't picked that often. The fact that they can stalk and snipe you'd think would be unbelievably good, but you can still see the arrows coming in, you know. So, yeah, they're not the best. So a little bit cheaper I think is good. It just means you've got that fun utility a little bit more widely available. So I like that. Also, Storm Riders are slightly cheaper as well. No one really brings a Storm Riders. Being able to shoot while moving for Loath and Seaguard doesn't really confer a lot of bonuses, so people don't tend to bring them. You know, it doesn't really help too much in their performance. So I like that. I like that. A little bit cheaper. And the Eagle Core Bolt Thrower has the multi-shot bonus versus infantry also, just like the Reaper Bolt Thrower. So makes a lot of sense. Love it. Lizardmen. I expect Lizardmen to have quite a few changes. They had the most recent DLC and another most recent DLC. I'm assuming they're getting a lot of love. So Krokgar has a bit more leadership. Cheaper on foot. Mazdamundi is more expensive on the Palanquin. Yeah, everything cheaper on foot. Skink Priest, far more expensive on a Pterodon. Extra 200 cost on a Pterodon. Which is kind of crazy. That is kind of crazy. Also, Slan Mage Priest is more expensive, and Lord Croak is plus 300 cost for Lord Croak, which is pretty gigantic. Salamander Hunting Packs, slightly increased turn speed, minus 10 armor, now uses splash attacks against small targets, and minus 8 AP projectile damage, extra projectile damage, base, which this makes a lot of sense, because now there is a sort of an armor-piercing variant of that kind of unit in the Razordons. So it makes sense that this one is the Salamander to be more specialized in just high base damage and lower AP, so that makes a lot of sense. Also, extra base explosion damage, but less AP explosion damage. So you're trading up fairly well here. So Umbral Tide gets the same thing, exact same thing by the looks of it. Oh, except melee attack and melee defense change as normal. So Ancient Salamander, extra. Actually, extra AP for him. I mean, he's the Ancient Salamander, right? He's got to stand out as being a bit special, because, well, he's a big lad. So, Croxigors reduce charge distance from 45 to 30. So, they're gonna charge, do their charge animation slightly closer to their targets. So, they won't suddenly, you know, speed up ridiculously to attack stuff from quite the same distance. Which, fair enough, I think, because that's a pretty huge distance to be charging from. For monstrous infantry. For cavalry, you know, it wouldn't be so bad, but for them, I think that is a bit much for something as slow as them, usually. So, 2 AP melee damage added, and some base damage, so just generally, they attack harder now, which is nice. Stegodons, less armor, only minus 10, so they still have, what, like 120, 130, something like that? Still a lot. Ancient Stegodons actually has slightly bigger reload time for the giant blowpipes. Those blowpipes do rack up a ton of kills, so just a little bit more of a delay between them, I think makes a lot of sense. Thunderous One, yeah, same deal, less armor, and also the melee attack and melee attack, and melee attack. That's supposed to be defense. It has +2 melee attack and -3 melee attack. Let's count that together. No, Feral Stegodon now uses large entity ground stat effect group. Like, what is this, guys? But anyway, Feral Stegodon's cheaper, which makes sense. Like, yeah, he's a Feral Stegodon. Like, Rampage and everything is a nightmare. Although Cold-Blooded can counter that, but still, the Feral units just aren't as good. So, people tend to go with the reliable ones if they're going to invest that kind of money in the first place. So, yeah, I like that. Stegodon a little bit cheaper as well. Feral Cold ones are just slightly healthier. I like that. More health, because they do die real quick. They're basically made out of paper, which is surprising, you know, to find out that dinosaurs are made of paper. But yeah, they die real quick, so extra health I think will do them some good. Feral Bastillodon now uses large entity ground stat effect group. Oh yeah, brilliant. Another one of those. So yeah, let me know what the hell that means, guys. I have no idea. Bastillodon with the Archosotek is cheaper. Makes perfect sense, because nobody brings it. It doesn't do anything. I mean, the Archosotek is good, like that Vortex. It's good against, like, quite good against low armored units. Other than that, it doesn't do anything, and you don't really want to spend, like, a bunch of extra money on something that'd be good against low armored targets when a Bastillodon is anti-infantry anyway, and it can kind of get the job done. But it was for something like 300, 400 quid more. It's too much. It was just too much extra for, you know, essentially just that Vortex spell, which just, it's not good against anything expensive. It only gets you value against crap stuff, which you're better off to bring another unit of skinks to deal with them. You know, one unit of skinks would get you the same amount of kills as the Archosotek would on top of the Bastillodon, so you're better off with just more units. Always. More is always better than better, right? That's just how it works. So, Bastillodon Revivification Crystal added casting animations. Ooh. So, it'll look fancy now. And Feral Carnosaur now uses large entity grants. Oh my god, alright, Pocket Pack Cohort. So, yep, Chevron changes, Chevron changes, Chevron changes, Chevron changes. Red Crested Skinks are a little bit more expensive. Yeah, fair enough, I was seeing them a lot. I personally, I never really... Not a big fan of the Red Crested Skinks. I don't tend to bring them often when I play. I just find you don't need armor piercing in your front line most of the time. You're better off having armor piercing with the monsters, right? Your front line is just there to keep things busy while the monsters take out key targets. That's how I, you know, or cavalry. That's how I tend to see Lizardmen. That's how I see most factions, honestly. My front line is for pinning stuff, so I don't really bother using things like Red Crested Skinks. So anyway, Cohort Sotek. Extra melee attack, less defense. More cost, though. Cohort Sotek, more cost. Just like the Red Crested Skinks. Temple Guards, lower melee attack. Oh, fair enough. Star Chamber Guardians, slightly more melee attack because the Chevron changes, but they also have slightly better missile block chance, the Star Chamber Guardians, because that was their one major weakness. Like, you see Star Chamber Guardians, you just shoot them. So, it's nice to see they will be slightly better at blocking those. We'll keep them going a little bit longer. So, Norska now. Wolfric on foot, cheaper. Chariot, more expensive. Mammoth, less health, less melee defense, and more expensive. There's been a lot of debate recently about Mammoths. I don't know if you guys have noticed any of it, but people are saying Mammoths are a little bit too powerful these days. And, I mean, I get it, but if you're going against Norska, you just bring something with mass to stop them from rampaging through your infantry, and you're kind of fine. But still, clearly, they thought, yeah, maybe they need some tweaks. Fair enough. Fair enough. Marauder Chieftains, slightly cheaper. On foot, obviously. On a Mammoth. Similar, yeah, same vibe as Wolfric, but also has the forest penalties for being a large entity, which it apparently didn't have before, which it should have done. So it makes sense. If you want to kill a Mammoth more easily, drag him into a forest. So, Feral Mammoth now has the forest terrain penalties as well, and less melee defense. War Mammoths, similar vibe here. Just less health for Mammoths. Okay, it's less health for Mammoths, and less melee defense for Mammoths. Okay, same thing with Soul Crusher. And the War Shrine as well. Less mass as well. And better charge speed and run speed, though. The War Shrine's slightly quicker. Alright then. Hounds of Tashnar have it's the same things as usual as it's just those normal changes. But Norscan Warhounds have Vanguard now. Weird that Norscan Warhounds didn't have Vanguard, so that makes a lot of sense. That should have been the case. Icehorn Marauders, slightly cheaper. Because yeah, I never see Icehorn Marauders. No one ever brings them. I can't even remember what their unique thing is. Because I never bring them. They're just such an overlooked thing. Because, yeah, clearly they were too expensive for what they did. Marauder Hunters with Javelins cost a little bit more, but the throwing axes are slightly cheaper. I think that's because everyone would bring Javelins, because that anti-large was better than the armor piercing in almost every situation. It made up for the lack of AP really well against large targets, so everyone would just go with the javelins because they were cheaper. But so this is a nice way to help balance things and make it really a choice between, do you want, you know, anti-large or do you want armor piercing, which I think is important, an important distinction. Brutes the Hound, melee attack and melee defense changes as well, you know, chevron stuff. Famir Warriors, less charge bonus, less melee attack, but more leadership and they're more expensive. So Famir, I think they got made cheaper a couple patches ago, and they've changed that back apparently. So Famir Warriors more expensive again. Or did they make them more expensive? I think they did. I remember they had a cost change. I think they were made more expensive, and clearly they're still being seen as a little too good to be made more expensive again. So Miststalkers have a similar thing going on, including the chevron changes. With great weapons, again, same kind of thing. I do like the extra leadership though, I think that's a nice change. Norscan Giant is cheaper. All the Giants are cheaper, guys, by 100. They're all 1500 now, which is really cool. Skin Wolves get an extra 2 charge bonus. I like that. I like that. Same with the armored ones. Because yeah, I found the charge bonus was a little bit lacking. But so that's a nice change. Moors of Savagery, +2 charge bonus, +3 melee attack, and -3 melee defense. Shaman Sorcerer, Norscan Warhorse, now uses the large entity ground stat effect group. That old chestnut. And Skin Wolf Werekin, now also, guys, now this is a big one, it uses the large entity ground stat effect group. I know you guys love that about units. So yeah, there's that. Skaven, Tretched Craventail is cheaper. Fair enough, I never see him. Ikit Claw, on foot, cheaper. On the Doomflayer, he now uses the large entity ground stat effect group. Also, he's removed Scurry Away. Doesn't have Scurry Away, which is interesting. So he's not going to suddenly... Oh, that's on the Doomflayer, though. Yeah, because the Doomflayer is already so quick. Giving him Scurry Away means nothing can catch him. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Queek, cheaper. Good. Good. Queek should be cheaper. Okay, that's brilliant. I like that. Warlock Master, cheaper on foot. And the Warlock Master is now using the large the large entity ground stat effect group. And slightly more melee attack on the Doom Wheel, and he doesn't have Scurry Away anymore on the Doom Wheel. Assassin, slightly cheaper, which is cool. Plague Priest, slightly cheaper. Warlock Engineer, slightly more expensive, which I can kind of see. I will always bring a Warlock Engineer over these other two. Almost every time. Just the Warpstone Armor and the Howling Warp Gale for flying, you know, for flight insurance is super useful. So yeah, I'm always bringing him over the other two. Because yeah, usually Plague Priest, if I want to summon things, I just bring Skrulk. The Assassin's pretty great though. I've had some great success with an Assassin in the past, but it is nice to see him a little bit cheaper. So, Warlord with the Bonebreaker. He has higher entity radius. Okay. Okay, so he's just bigger. He's a bigger target, so he gets shot more, I guess. He's just got a bigger hitbox, I assume. Also, increased splash damage force by 50, which I like. So he will be, you know, smashing people up into the air a lot more. And I'm sure that'll translate to more damage and things. But also, I think it's just going to look a bit more appropriate because the Bonebreaker, he doesn't seem to throw people around as much as I'd like. I just like to see people get thrown around. It's fun. So, Warp Fire Throwers all get a little bit of extra health. Fair enough. Hellpit Abomination now uses the large entity ground stat effect group. Hell yeah. So do Rat Ogres. Oh man, everyone's getting it. What a great day. Ikit Zap Zap. Yeah, it's all the Regiment Renown stuff at this point. Oh, except Plague Monk Sensor Bearer is slightly cheaper. Brilliant, because they never pay for themselves because they're so flimsy. Like a 1 cavalry charge and half the unit's dead. One like a cheap like Wind Blast and half the unit's dead. They fight Empire Swordsman and half the unit is dead. Yeah, they're an annoying unit. They are such an annoying unit. If they get charged, they lose. Because they're just so flimsy. So they can do a massive amount of damage. But the thing's got to be stood still and they need to run up to it, preferably from behind, and kill them. I mean, huge armor piercing, but they're one of those units that if they're not fighting something really expensive, they will not get. You know, they will not make their cost back. Yeah, which is kind of odd. It's a weird one. The more expensive the thing they are, the better they do for their cost, you know. It's odd. Because, yeah, they'll kill everything equally, but everything will kill them equally. So, you know. Blightscale's Plague Pack. Yeah, Regiment Renown, you know, the chevron changes. Poison Wing Globadiers, actually less reload time, so they will be able to attack more often, which I really like. Because they have such short range, it's very difficult to get many shots off sometimes. So that's a nice change. Teeth Breakers. More melee attack, less defense. Storm Vermin with halberds get slightly more melee defense, which is interesting. I'm not sure if they really needed that. But maybe they did. I feel like if you wanted a holding force, you tend to just go with the other Storm Vermin for some reason. Council Guard get the same kind of changes for the chevrons, but they are slightly more expensive. Makes sense. They're unbreakable. They are really worth a lot of cash, especially in a faction that has soddle leadership across the board. So having an unbreakable unit, you should have to pay for it. Now to be both sharpshooters, extra melee attack, way less melee defense, like crazily lower melee defense. So it means if they are caught out, they're dead. I mean, they're already pretty dead if they get caught out, but now they're really dead. And also, slightly lower projectile range, minus 25. That's for all Giselles. They all lose that minus 25 range. That goes from 300 to 275, which isn't huge, but it's something. That could be one less shot. They're getting into your expensive units. So I like that. Also, they're more expensive. Increased projectile calibration area. So I think that actually means they're less accurate, I think is what that translates to. And the increased projectile expiry range. Oh yeah, so that's where the projectile would disappear. Even if there was more range, you know, it would fire and it wouldn't reach the target before fizzling out. So they've increased that a ton. So the projectile will just keep going if it misses. Or, you know, if they're running away, it'll keep going and chasing, which I like. I think that makes sense. But still, yeah, it's going to be less accurate now. So fair enough, because my word, it was ridiculous. And Warlock Giselles, less projectile range, less melee defense, and yeah, calibration rate and the expiry. So all the same stuff there, except the melee attack and defense slightly different because they don't have the chevrons. Anyway, Dwarf Thing Menace. Yep, more melee attack, low defense. Wheels of Doom, same thing. Right, Tomb Kings now. All the foot lords cheaper. Casket of Souls plus 2 projectiles per volley. That is huge because projectiles per volley is like, that's a big deal because it shoots so many already. They do quite a lot of damage per hit. So that's really cool. I really like that. We could see some serious fun with the Casket of Souls. Because yeah, Tomb Kings are not my favourite race, but the Casket of Souls, I just think it's such a fun artillery piece. It's really cool. Lit Priest is going to be more expensive. Cetra, cheaper on foot. Tomb Print, yeah, everything's cheaper on foot, guys. That's just how it goes. Nahakara Horsemen actually having their mass reduced a bit, and their melee defense reduced a bit, because they were very survivable, actually. And yeah, they did seem to have a lot of mass, too. Like, everyone was bringing Nahakara Horsemen this last patch. They were just far and away the only cavalry that people bothered with. Or sometimes, actually, the horse archers, but, you know, just horsemen. Yeah, everyone just went with the Nahakara ones. They just performed so much better that they're worth the additional cost. Necropolis Knights get better charge bonus, better melee defense, better AP melee damage, and base melee damage, and max splash damage targets. This means the Necropolis Knights are just going to be straight up way better, which is good. I like that, because Necropolis Knights, they're just kind of like the demigriffs. They don't get brought, right? It's halberds or nothing. And the halberds have also got some bonuses. But not more splash damage, so basically the splash damage means they're going to be better at fighting infantry, right? Because they're going to be hitting more models that are near them, and obviously infantry will be bunched around, so that splash damage will reach more targets. But that splash damage is not going to help if they're fighting like a single model, but that's what the halberds are for. So now it means these two are going to be slightly more specialised in each of their things. So more AP across the board, but more splash damage for the Necropolis Knights, and yeah, just straight up more damage for the other. But the splash damage will make a big difference for these being the anti-infantry and these being the anti-large, which I like, not just the anti-large bonus. So I love it. That's really nice. Necrosphinx now has the forest terrain penalty for being a large entity, as it should. Sphinx of Usekf, same thing, and it has more melee attack. But you notice there's no reduction in melee defense, so clearly they wanted the melee defense to remain high. So it's not just chevron changes, there have been some other tweaks, as well as chevron changes. So, Tomb Scorpion. Forest penalties. Good, makes sense. Carrion, cost more. Good, finally. I cannot believe it took them this long to make Carrion more expensive. They were just so much better than Failbats that Failbats were obsolete, right? There was no reason to have them in Arcane's roster, right? It's like, you can have bats. Why? Carrion are like the same price, but 8 times as good. So, you know, Carrion is just way too good for that kind of unit. No other faction has, you know, just some cheap flyer that performs as well as Carrion do. They're just stupidly cost effective. They're just so resilient. So they'll tie things up for hours. So yeah, good. They should be more expensive. Blessed Legion of Fax. +1 melee attack, more reload skill, less melee defense, because, you know, it's the usual chevron thing. And they are slightly cheaper, which is interesting. Interesting to see that. Skeleton Spearman, slightly better bonus versus large, and their melee attack interval is slightly quicker. So they will be attacking more often and have a better bonus versus large. So Skeleton Spearmen will be a little bit more offensive now, which is kind of cool to see. King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion, similar things. It's somewhere between the Chevron changes and the changes to Spearmen, so fair enough. Kepra Guard get +3 melee attack, +7 melee defense, but they are losing some AP melee damage, but they're getting bonus versus infantry instead, which is pretty cool. I really like that, actually. Because, yeah, they should be a frontline fighter against, other infantry. That's kind of cool. So I like that. I like that a lot. That's a nice change. So that's fun. Yeah, I like that. Sepulchral Stalkers, more ammunition. Never really used them for their ranged attacks, but fine, I guess. Strange change. I'm not really sure what triggered the need for that, but fine. And then Eyes of the Desert, just the, chevrons plus the ammo change. Chosen of the Gods, more melee attack, low defense, and they're more expensive. That's the big thing. They're 50 more expensive for the Chosen of the Gods. So that's kind of cool. And Standard Casket of Souls does have the +2 projectiles per volley. It's not just the mount. So that's really good. I really like that. Casket of Souls, it is so flimsy, so it is such a risk to bring, but it can do massive damage. And I love the idea of it doing massive damage. That's great. Loving that. So, Vampire Coast. Aranessa on foot is cheaper. Aranessa on the Rotting Promethean is cheaper. Just Aranessa is cheaper. She should be. She sucks these days. I preferred her when she was overpowered, when her attack animations would hit things like 8 times. Because it's so rare that she'd catch anything. If you just played Keep Away for an Aranessa, you would win that fight. You just have a fight Empire Swordsman and she'd go down eventually because she had no armor and no speed. That net of hers, it didn't last long enough to even, on the edge of that range of the ability. It wouldn't give her time to reach the thing before it got away again. So, she had to be good in melee. She just isn't. So I'm glad she's at least cheaper now. Salostra Dafa, floating. Okay, that's really cool that it's not on foot, because technically she's not. That's good. So Salostra Dafa, floating is slightly cheaper, and slightly cheaper on the Rotting Leviathan, and slightly better melee damage as well. Not AP, but just better melee damage. So fair enough. Gunnery White on foot is cheaper. Fair enough. I don't see the Gunnery White often, so... But anyway, every foot thing seems to be getting cheaper, so, that's not really improving the Gunnery White, that's just making the foot lords and heroes less pointless. Bloated Corpse, slightly cheaper. Good, because Bloated Corpses just never pay for themselves. They never pay for themselves, so make them a bit cheaper. Depth Guard, more health per entity. Oof, yeah, that's going to be painful, but they are a bit squishy these days, honestly. I find Depth Guard are usually not worth the cost, because if they're focused down, they do just end up crumbling very quickly and dying. Bloody Roof Deck Guard, yeah, chevron things and more health. Sirens actually get a bit of extra leadership, which I think makes sense. Usually the physical resistance didn't really matter. The fact they're ethereal didn't matter, because as soon as they got into combat, they just start crumbling. They just freak out, just terrified. Maybe they see each other. Maybe they're scared of ghosts, so they just, have terrible leadership because they're always hanging out with ghosts. Could be it, right? You never know. Rotting Leviathan, better melee damage. Zombie deckhand mobs all get less health and leadership. Yes, finally. These things just, this is why I've really disliked Vampire Coast. I mean, obviously some things are just brilliant about Vampire Coast. The design of it is gorgeous, but I just hate the fact the trash never dies. It just lasts forever. So -5 health per entity is pretty significant. And the extra leadership, it just means they're going to crumble that little bit quicker, and they're going to be losing more health over time. So that's great. They're not going to keep, elite units of cavalry busy for 12 hours at a time, before they die, which is brilliant. So they will go down a lot quicker. And Tide of Skjold have had the similar vibe. Just more melee attack, not lower melee defense, though, for them. Black Spot, more melee attack, less defense. It's just the chevron stuff. Lamprey's Revenge, chevron stuff. Night Terrors, chevron stuff. But they've actually lowered the melee attack, I suppose, because it's only less melee defense. Gallows Giant, lower melee defense. Projectile expiry range increased. So, okay, if things are running away from the fire, the flames, then the flames will keep going a little longer. Which, yep, fair enough. Aranessa now uses small aquatic terrain stat effect group. Okay, so is that what that does? If it's a large thing, it doesn't get affected by, like, shallow water, for instance. Is that what that is? That terrain effect group? So with those units, all of those things we've been talking about throughout everything being attached to that terrain group, they were all getting debuffed as if they were infantry or something. Is that what was happening? That could be it. But now they're not. And so now Aranessa has aquatic. So if she's in shallows, she gets a bonus rather than, you know, debuffed like other infantry. Anyway, maybe it's something like that. Queen Bess. Yeah, just the extra melee attack and low defense. Deck dropper bombers are cheaper. Good, because no one ever uses them because they're just trash compared to handguns, which are now more expensive. So this should balance out, you know, the sort of which ones are brought and what jobs you're going to assign to your flyers here. You know, bombers are going to be cheaper, handguns more expensive. And yeah, the same things going on for the Regiment Renowned with the chevrons, but the Salt Lord Scuttlers, they are actually a lot cheaper. 100 cheaper, which is pretty significant. But they're the bombers. No one ever brings them because they're bombers. So I like that. I like that. Vampire counts now. I think we're getting close to the end, finally. Wow, we've been going for 50 minutes. Jesus, this is an hour-long video. This is why I'm only doing multiplayer in this one. Vlad von Karstein, cheaper on foot. Red Duke, cheaper on foot. Heinrich Kemmler, just cheaper. Isabella von Karstein, 50 cost down. Manfred von Karstein, minus 50 cost. Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, Lamian Vampire Lord, Necrarch Vampire Lord, Strigoi Vampire Lord, Von Karstein Vampire Lord, Strigoi Ghoul King, Vampire Lord, all cheaper on foot. In fact, it just says Strigoi Ghoul King, minus 100 cost. I'm assuming on foot, but it could be across the board. It could even be on, you know, on foot and on the Terrorgeist. I'm not sure. Just from looking at the notes, because they usually split those up, but I don't know, maybe just cheaper in general, which would make sense. No one ever brings a Strigoi Ghoul King, because he's just not as good. He's not even as good as the Strigoi Vampire Lord, you know, it's just, yeah, there's no point bringing him. Master Necromancer, Barded Nightmare, more expensive, which, yeah, I can see that, Master Necromancer's going to be an absolute nuisance when they're mounted. They can just run around, they're really cheap, and they can just throw zombies at you, they're a pain. And obviously Invocation and Heck and all the rest of it is great. So Necromancer and Nightmare, more expensive. Vampires on foot, cheaper. Banshees have gone down by 100 cost, which is really cool. I really like that, actually. Because Banshees are really interesting units, but they are ruddy expensive. Especially because a lot of the time, you know, they cause terror, and you're paying for that, but everything in the Vampire counter roster causes terror. So you don't necessarily need them for that. You just want them for, like, something resilient that has AP, right? But, yeah, they're just so flimsy. If they do get hit by anything magic, they'll just die in seconds. So they should be cheaper. You know, I like that. Because people will bring insurance. They're like higher levels of multiplayer. They will bring something to counter ethereal units if they go up against vampire counts. So Banshees suddenly become kind of obsolete, which is sad. Anyway, White Kings are cheaper as well, including on foot and on his steed. So that's cool. Khan Wraiths are getting more leadership and a better charge bonus. It just seems like ethereal units across the board are getting more leadership, because I know ethereal units do just tend to crumble, like, really quickly, to the point where you don't even necessarily need magic damage to deal with them. You just surround them and they crumble in seconds. So, yeah, more leadership across the board, I think, helps a lot to, you know, make them worthwhile in that niche. So, Skeleton Spearmen, better bonus versus large, just like the Skeleton Spearmen for the Tomb Kings. Crypt Horrors, extra AP and base damage. Just way more damage for the Crypt Horrors. That's a brilliant thing to have, because Crypt Horrors are the worst. They're just terrible. They have no armor. They just die. They just die in seconds, basically. You're always going to have, like, guns or something to try and deal with, like, a big, scary stuff like a Mortis Engine. And the same tools apply to the Crypt Horrors. And sadly, because they have absolutely no armor, you're always going to go with melee defense over attack. With your front line against vampire count, there's always going to be a row of spears. Right, it's always going to be a row of spearmen, and Crypt Horrors will die to them because they have no armor, so cheap spearmen with their anti-large will just kill them all. They'll never pay for themselves, so they needed buffs. So this might go some way to making them, you know, cost-effective, or at least vaguely worthwhile. So anyway, Varix Reavers, yep, same chevron changes. Feasters in the Dust, yep, chevron changes. Cunningstine Stalkers, chevron changes. It's all the same. It's all the same stuff here. Yep, for everything. I don't see anything unique there. Cool. Warriors of Chaos. Archaon, cheaper on foot. Sigvald, Chaos Sorcerer Lord. Chaos Lord, Chaos Sorcerers, Exalted Hero, all cheaper on foot. All slightly more expensive. Nope. Chaos Lord is slightly cheaper on a Barded Chaos Steed. But generally, mounts are more expensive across the board. Just little plus 50s. Oh no, that's a minus 50 as well. Okay, Exalted here is just cheaper generally, which is kind of cool to see, but not on the Manticore. So, again, it's just causing that range of expense for mounts. So, fair enough. Dragon Ogres now have plus 15 armor, which is significant. That is a significant buff for Dragon Ogres, because Dragon Ogres are already awesome. Like, I will almost always bring a Dragon Ogre over a Shaggoth, because Dragon Ogres are so much better at catching something. You know, they'll get a surround on stuff. And against sort of other anti-large cavalry, they tend to perform way better than a Shaggoth. Like, a Shaggoth just gets surrounded, and it'll get hit by so many more things per hit that it'll get dragged down. You know, the DPS of an entire unit surrounding it is going to be higher than his DPS. Whereas Dragon Ogres have a higher DPS, so they're better at dealing with cavalry and single model targets. So I just find Dragon Ogres are super good here. Obviously, you've got to be a bit more clever with them, but still. And they do suffer in cheap infantry, so, you know, they have the downsides. But they have their strength, so I find it odd they've been given more armor. I think they're a great unit as is, but if they needed any improvement, armor would be it, because cheap spearmen, same as Crypt Horrors, cheap spearmen will eventually drag them down because they're low armor. So, you know, if they were to have a change, I guess that would be it. But I'm still super surprised to see it. But anyway, Summoners of Rage, rather, they're getting the same treatment. And then, of course, the, you know, Chevron stuff. But also, they are slightly more expensive. So, fair enough, Summoners of Rage. I mean, if people brought Dragon Ogres, it would be the Summoners of Rage. Pretty much all the time. So, yeah, that makes sense. Swords of Chaos, plus 10 melee attack, plus 3 melee defense, plus 10 AP melee damage. Oh, and they've lost their bonus versus infantry. I guess they're better all-rounders now. And plus 5 base melee damage, but they're more expensive. No. Give them all those changes, but don't change their cost. Or minus 50 cost, and I think that would be great. Because there's too few of them in the unit to do anything. I get that you've given them a big buff, got rid of the bonus versus infantry, right? With all the extra melee attack and all the rest of it, they will be better against, you know, single models or other cavalry or whatever, rather than being apparently an infantry killing thing, because other knights are better at killing infantry simply because there's more models. That was my ringtone, by the way. So yeah, don't make them more expensive. Just, oh well. We'll have to see how it works. This might all balance out, but to me, I think Swords of Chaos are still just, no one ever brings them. They're not good enough. And I don't think this is going to make them good enough to... This would, I think, make them good enough to warrant their cost now, but you can't make them more expensive. I think that's a damn shame. Anyway, Chaos Knights, more AP and base damage. So Chaos Knights have been improved. So just standard Chaos Knights are better. And they were already a better pick than Swords of Chaos. Alright, never mind. Mirror Guard, yeah, just the Chevron changes. Solid Damnation Chevron changes. Chaos Giant cheaper and Chaos Spawn cheaper. Now, I think these changes, the change to the Giant and the Chaos Spawn, I did have an inkling that I think it's mostly for the Chaos roster. And it's just they want to make it uniform across the board. But, because I think Chaos Spawn, you never bring them as Chaos, and the Chaos Giant you basically never bring either, because you know you've got other units. You know, you have a Shaggoth instead of a Giant that has more utility, so you do that instead. But I think it's going to benefit the other factions way more than Chaos. This is just going to be, maybe someone will bring these units as Chaos now, whereas the other factions are going to be laughing with those with the cost reductions on them. So that's what I reckon anyway. Sartorial, less missile resist. That's actually quite a big deal. That's actually quite big. That's pretty big. Also, Chaos Warhounds finally have Vanguard. So again, brilliant. Chaos Warhounds should have Vanguard. They really should, because they have no unit that can really do that in Chaos. There's nothing that Vanguards. So they do need something that can help chase down like Skirmish Cav and help catch them out early. You know, it's too important. I mean, I guess they have their own Skirmish Cav, but having a Skirmish Cav Vanguarded without your Warhounds that can block charges and help you get out of there, it's yeah. Anyway, Wordspawn and Plague Spew? Demon Spew, no? Anyway, they got the same treatment. Yeah, it is Demon Spew. That's... Oh, well. They got the same Regiment Renown Chevron treatment. So, Wood Elves now. Orion has Vanguard. Hell yes, he does. That is huge and awesome. He is a bit more expensive though, but he's got Vanguard. It means he can actually do a proper Wood Elf Vanguard army now. With Orion and his Wild Hunt, he can be there with his cavalry. You know, he can be there with the Wild Riders, vanguarded and ready to attack stuff. That is beautiful. I love it. And I love you, CA. Thank you. I've wanted Orion to have Vanguard for quite some time. Durthu has a bit more armor, which is pretty cool. Ancient Treeman, bit more armor, and a lot cheaper, because, yeah, Ancient Treeman, no one really bothered to bring him ever. You'd bring a Spell Singer if you wanted a Law of Magic, and if you wanted a tanky Lord, you'd bring Durthu. So, you know. Branch Wraith, slightly cheaper, and he's immune psychology now. I like that. That's some nice changes. I really like the Branch Wraith, but I don't know. He's sort of more there for support, I think. So I kind of like that. Glade Lord, the foot. On foot, cheaper, obviously. Spell Singers, a bit more expensive on steeds, but it doesn't say anything about being on eagles, and that tends to be the most common. So, you know, that stays the same. Waystalkers, 100 cheaper, which is good. I like that a lot. Because, again, they're a little too expensive for what they do. The fact that if they are caught, they're dead, because there's nothing they can do, you know, because they're a foot character. Wild Hunts of Kurnos. They don't have Guardian anymore, but they do now have magic attacks and plus 13 bonus versus large. Wow, that's really interesting. So magic damage and bonus versus large. That makes me think they're gonna be a lot better against Britonia. Wow, that's really cool. But yeah, no Guardian anymore, which I guess in a way makes a lot of sense, because it's odd that they'd have Guardian, because obviously it's Wild Hunters of Kurnos, right? It's the god of the hunt. It's Orion's, you know. I mean, well, Orion is the god essentially. He's the avatar of Kurnos. So, like, yeah, he's all about being fighty. The idea of something that embodies him, you know, embodies that. Having Guardian, it doesn't make a lot of thematic sense. So that's actually an interesting change. You know, when you think of it like that, this makes a lot of sense. I like that a lot. Also, Way Watchers. Slower. That's good. Less nonsense with them. Less health per entity. They do have more charge bonus. Less melee defense. They cost a bit more. That's a lot of very different changes, but basically going to be slower and easier to kill is the main thing. Slower and easier to kill and a bit more expensive. So, can cheese a little bit fewer armies. And, because of the slightly added cost, they're going to need to make sure that ammunition is being used on, you know, serious targets, or they won't pay for themselves. Which, again, brilliant. They should be like a high skill cap unit, but right now they're just cheesed. They have been for, you know, since Wood Elves was released. So, it happens. Anyway, Hawkeye's Drakira got the same kind of thing, but they also got plus 8 bonus versus infantry, which is pretty cool. That's kind of cool to see. That's novel. That's very novel. Very surprised to see that. But, alright. Cool. Treekin. Better entity rate. Okay, so that means they're bigger, essentially, but they have more armor. So, bigger hitboxes, but more armor. Firebark Elders. Yeah, more armor. They're bigger. Better melee attack, lower defense. Just the chevron changes. Treemen have 10 more armor, which is nice. Orion, Vanguard, been through that, but hell yeah, I love it. Hawk Riders, made entity 12% wider. Improved firing animations to make first volley faster. Okay, how's that work? I don't know, but they're slightly bigger, so more prone to missile fire, basically. Which, fair enough, because they do need to be countered, you know. Glade Riders have slightly more leadership. Only plus 2, it's nothing major, but it's something. Wildwood Rangers, lower melee damage and lower AP. Really? Weird. Also plus 2 run speed, so they are a bit quicker. They have slightly better charge speed. Run speed and charge speed. They're cheaper, which is brilliant. It should have been a long time ago, because they have the same problems as Sensor Bearers. They're so flimsy. If they're fighting something dirt cheap like Empire Swordsman, they'll just not net any value whatsoever. They'll just get killed by crap, because they have no defensive stats. You know, no armor to speak of. So yeah, anyway. Odd one. Honestly, I would have just made them cheaper. Increased unit spacing, though, I think could have a big impact. Because depending on how much they've been spaced out, it just means that missiles aren't going to kill them as quickly. Things like artillery, you know, you can't just have like a cannonball wipe out half the unit. Which could be it, you know, that could help. But also, if you've increased the unit spacing, and they're going to be more prone to being charged by cavalry, which could be a problem. So I don't know if this will fix Wildwood Rangers, but it's showing an attempt to do something with them, right? They've identified there's a problem with them and they've done some stuff. The fact that they're cheaper means that you can bring more of them. Because that's the one thing with sensor bearers. Usually if you just bring a ton of them, there's not enough missiles to go around. And so they will all manage to get into the front line and start doing damage. But, yeah, otherwise, yeah, if you just bring one, it'll die. And, you know, you'll get no value out of one. But you'll get value if you bring a ton, right? Lean into a mistake. I often tell people to do that. Just lean into a bad idea, right? People don't plan to counter a bad idea en masse. It's just not what people do. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. Because I love Wildwood Rangers. I think they're really cool units, but they just suck in multiplayer in my book. So, Wardens of Scythe Roll. Yeah, so similar changes. So yeah, slightly cheaper as well. And they got the chevron changes and the extra speed. War Dancers. Lower melee attack and higher defense, which is weird. They're a very offensive unit. I find it strange to do that. I think they should be very killy rather than defensive, but fine, I guess. I guess it'll just slow down the pace slightly of sort of a Wood Elf advance, because that's a serious thing. You know, whenever I play Wood Elves, I tend to play a Rush Army, and the match is over in 30 seconds, because everything just dies so quickly. You know, it's all glass cannon. I just go for it. So, yeah, having something that won't kill quite as quickly, it might mean the enemy front line might hold for at least a few seconds. And yeah, maybe they'll have time to stop all of the cavalry coming around the flanks or whatever, you know, before the front line comes pouring in. Anyway, Loix Tricksters. Extra melee attack, lower defense, and slightly cheaper. I like that, because Loix Tricksters, I didn't tend to bring them over, you know, over the other, just the non-ROR, so fair enough. Finally, we're at spells and abilities. So, Summon Unbindings. Now split into 3 phases with different colours. So you'll actually see where, like, what stage of a summon is at, which is nice. So blue for stable, orange for weak, and red for critical. Cool, isn't it? So, you know, if it's orange, it's only got 30 seconds left. If it's red, it's about to go, which is nice. Deliverance of Itza, 1, 2, and 3, all have lower armor-piercing vortex damage. And they're all more expensive. So that's pretty huge. Because, yeah, he's already more expensive, isn't he, Lord Croak? Lord Croak is already, I think, 200 cost up. And his spells have been nerfed a bit. But that minus 8%, 5%, 3%, that's minus 8 of a billion. So it's still going to be huge, right? It's still going to kill pretty much anything. So it always doesn't matter. Like, it's something. But the fact that Croak costs more, I think, is more the balancing factor for Deliverance of Itza. And the spell cost, I suppose. You can just use it less. So, Shadows of Anlek, minus 14% base vortex damage. Fiery Convocation, plus 100% AP vortex damage. And it now deals fire damage. That's pretty good, actually. That's pretty good. Fiery Convocation doesn't do much. It doesn't do a lot, really. It's not that impressive. So, giving it some more armor piercing, it means it can actually be used against, like, better units. Better quality units. Because that's the thing, like, you don't want to spend a ton of Winds of Magic to kill some Chaos Marauders. But if you can kill some Chaos Warriors, then maybe, right? So, you know, that's the trade there, really. So more AP makes a lot of sense. Pestilent Breath, slightly lower damage. The upgraded Pestilent Breath, also lower damage. Wind Blast does less damage, but it has higher detonation force. So I'm pretty sure this translates to knocking stuff over more. Which I like. I actually like that. It'll be less about just killing stuff outright. It still does a ton of damage, mind you, because it's Wind Blast. It's a great spell. But I think it'll be... You'll want to use it more as your, like, cavalry are charging in or something, right? So knock over a bunch of halberds and then charge them. So you muck up their charge defense. You know, they're not braced, and you can get max damage on those kind of things. So I think that's kind of the way to use it now, and I like that. So it'll just blast people aside so you can charge them. And upgraded... Similar thing, lower damage, lower AP as well, and more force. Exorcism, this is a big change, by the way. This is a big change. So the Law of Light, Law passive, so that's that little Law attribute that you can add, like Kindle Flame and stuff like that. So Exorcism for Law of Light. It used to lower leadership for Undead, which doesn't have a lot of uses in a lot of matchups. So it is often just something that you'd forget to turn off. Right? And you just have it anyway. Now, it's useful wherever because it's now a map-wide AoE augment that affects all allies, giving immune to psychology and plus 4 leadership for 11 seconds. So that's really cool. So it means that'll be time you're not going to terrify, which means that it's still going to be good essentially it's still going to be good against undead factions that tend to have a lot of terror, like fear and terror. So it's going to counter that, which I think is great. So it'll still be a great lore attribute against the same things, but it means it won't be obsolete against others, which I think is really cool. I think that's really nice. So that's a nice change. So yeah, like it. Although it's still called Exorcism, which still doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, Bestial Surge, lower vigor. Now it won't add quite as much vigor to your troops, but fair enough, because vigor is it's a hell of a resource. Plague Rash, the vigor it takes away again. Not as big. It's gone from 9% to 5%. Sunfang does a bit less damage. As you'll see, it just wind spells they do less damage now because they're clearly the best spells, right? You don't bother using a vortex because you don't know where it's going to go. Wind spells, though, you know where they're going to go exactly. So it's just better, and they tend to be quite cheap too. So having them all nerfed a little bit, fair enough, because we all know that spells are just overpowered, right? Like every spell you bring is just gonna be better. Soulfire and Grand Soulfire, hate these changes. I hate them. I hate these changes. Don't do these changes. Don't do the changes. Stop it. Projectile damage from 26 to 1. What? I don't know. Plus 200% explosion radius. Okay. Explosion damage no longer affects allies. Removed magic resistance increase in radius. They've removed magic resistance. This is what I use this spell for. This is what I use Soulfire for. It's for the magic resistance. Grail Knights come and attack your, Altdorf Griffites, and then suddenly 90% of the damage from the Grail Knights is completely ignored for 7 seconds, which is plenty time to kill a bunch of Grail Knights. And then you use the Scroll of Power to reset the cooldown, use Soulfire all over again. It's brilliant. I love that. And but it makes total sense because this was the original intention of the spell. Fun fact, guys, bit of trivia for you. In Warhammer 1, they didn't have the ability to make effects sort of distinguish between friend or foe. And so what they did, because it was a big, AoE around the guy that would be fighting with your friends, they made it so it had a magic resistance buff, so that way your allies didn't take the damage from your own ability. That's what they did that for. It was literally just to counteract the damage from the spell. But in Warhammer 2, as you can see from Lord Kroak's abilities, right, they have the ability to distinguish between friend or foe. So they finally changed it to reflect that, for to keep it consistent. And that was the original design. The magic resistance, just a weird side effect of them trying to get that to work. But I loved it for the magic resistance. It was so cool. So that's what I hate. Although I'm not quite sure what this is going on. Projectile damage from 26 to 1 plus. So it's bigger range, but 26 to 1. That seems like a big drop, which is weird. But hey, that's a thing. Weird. I don't like it. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it a lot. I'm really going to miss the magic resist, but oh well. Divine Power now has map-wide radius, reduced miscast chance, increased from 50% to 25%. Which one was Divine Power? I can't remember which one that was. Yeah, I think Divine Power might have actually been on the Warrior Priest. I think it might have been on them too. Anyway, so the miscast chance isn't quite so severe. Fireball, minus 25% AP projectile damage from 200 to 150. Minus 26 projectile damage, so just fireballs do less damage, is basically what this is trying to tell us. And yeah, I think fair enough, because spamming fireballs has been all people have been doing lately. Here, though, fireball upgraded, plus 300 AP projectile damage. It was previously at 0, and minus 70% base projectile damage. So that's 800 less base projectile damage. And less projectile penetration, so it's going to hit through fewer units. Fair enough. Lead Bubonicus. Slightly lower damage chance, so every tick has slightly lower chance to do it, to actually do damage that tick. Spirit Leech and Spirit Leech upgraded. Less damage chance as well. So Soul Stealer, less damage chance. Arcane Unforging in the upgraded one, less damage chance. Web of Shadows, less damage chance. Effigy Git, less damage chance. Final Transmutation, upgraded, less damage chance. Warpstone Armor. Frequency change from half a second to 1 second, so DPS is halved. So Warpstone Armor is going to be a lot less, which makes me realise, wow. And they made the Warlock Engineer 100 more expensive, I believe, right? So his damage potential is halved, and he's more expensive. Wow. That's sad. Well, alright, it's not his entire damage potential. He can also hit things, but still, this is why you got it generally. But yeah, so all of this just you know, click and damage spells basically will do less damage, which I think fair enough. Like I really do. Rune of Wrath and Ruin. The speed change has been massively increased. Wow. Rune of Wrath and Ruin, instead of doing minus 48% speed, it's 72% speed and 72% charge speed. That is insane. So, no longer deals direct... Oh, okay, it doesn't do any damage, though. It doesn't do any damage anymore. And the duration has gone up by 1 second. Increased target range from 150 to 200 meters. That's huge, though. I mean, 72%, that means you can easily catch up to chariots and stuff. Like, that's going to stop them getting exploited, basically. But it's super weird because it's the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. It, you know, sounds like a very offensive thing, right? And it does no damage now. Just it's just like someone shouting, "You walk, no running here." They go, "Oh, sorry, mate. I didn't realize. I didn't see the sign." Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, same thing. But wow, it lasts for 38 seconds. 38 seconds. Of minus 72% speed. That is crippling. This is going to be super powerful. This could potentially make dwarfs competitive, but sadly it's just specific to having runesmiths and rune lords. So we're going to see a whole lot more runesmiths and rune lords, boys. So doom bolts will have 200% extra projectile shockwave radius, which sounds fun. So it just hit more stuff when it lands, I guess. Dreaded 13th spell. Oh, we never see this one. So extra damage. Just extra damage with the dreaded 13th spell. It'll still obviously summon some storm vermin. Gyrocopter bombs will do more damage, including more AP damage, which is good. I think gyrocopters do need some help there. Comet Cassandora, more AP explosion damage. Cool. I like that a lot, actually, because Comet Cassandora, it takes a long time to land, and it's quite expensive. So it's good to see an upgrade there for normal and upgraded. Oronon's Thunderbolt. More AP. Again, I really like that. It's such a tiny attack, you know, that... oh, and 300 meters, so big range. So, basically as much as artillery, and you can hit artillery with it. So, that's kind of nice. Upgraded, again, just more damage, and more range, so same changes. Standard, Giver of Glory. That's the War Mammoth War Shrine. It's removed the Unbreakable attribute effect. Okay, but it's added plus 26 melee attack and 16 leadership, and it goes for another 13 seconds. Oh, only for 3 uses, and 30-second recharge as well. Interesting. Increased target range to 60 meters. Wow, that's really awesome actually, because the War Shrine was a bit crap, honestly. That was real rubbish. I didn't really like the War Shrine at all. Its bonuses just weren't very good, but now it's essentially another fight or die. You know? So you can have that, and obviously it's a different name than fight or die, which means it'll stack, essentially. So that's really good. I really like that. Lord of Undeath, plus 40 seconds summon duration. Spider Hatchlings, minus 30. Oh. Spiteful Shot, plus 9 second duration. Spiteful Shot upgraded, lasts longer. So Spiteful Shot, that's the spell that makes people more, you know, guns more accurate. I think that's fine. Occam's Mind Eraser lasts a bit longer, which again I really like. I like that because you kind of want it for your, you know, the magic and the extra damage. I think it's just good to have it there. I think that's nice. Cloak of Mist and Shadows, plus 5 seconds. Fists of Gork, plus 7 seconds. So a lot of the buffs seem to be getting a lot of love, and a lot of the damaging spells seem to be getting nerfed. And I think that is brilliant. I think that is really good, because I think spells should be more focused on buffing, because they're more fun. Direct damage spells aren't fun, but making better use out of your troops is better, right? You and your opponent get to, you know, do things, get to react. Just direct damage, you can't react to it if you're being hit by it. Whereas having to set up some troops, hit them with a buff, and get them on that unit that you want to, you know, see the benefit of that buff, they have the ability to net you, or run away, or focus you down more units, or get this around, try and break you before you can get the most use out of it, whatever. You know, there's things that they can do to react to the spell, so I think it's way more fun, so that should be encouraged. So, Flaming Sword of Ruin lasts longer as well. Gaze and Nagash is cheaper. Night Shroud is cheaper. Shem's Burning Gaze is cheaper. Okay, a lot of the missile spells have been made cheaper though, which is weird. But I guess they can be dodged, so there is that. Banishment is slightly cheaper, but again, it's unreliable. It goes off in weird directions. It's not just click and damage. No, No, so Banishment should be cheaper because it's unreliable. Baroness Time Warp is slightly cheaper. Dwellers Below is slightly cheaper. Awaken the Wood is cheaper. Pan's Impenetrable Pelt is cheaper. Curse of Vandra here is cheaper. Warp Lightning is more expensive though. Good, because that is so easy to spam. Skitter Leap, -3 power cost. Yes, that's brilliant because it's such a stupid spell that is almost never worth the cost. But it's such a great thing to be able to do to hide a bunch of your army. So it should be cheaper. It should be so cheap, you know, because it takes creativity to use. It's not just an instant win, right? You've still got to actually make use of your hidden troops. So yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. Scorch, cheaper. Vermintide, more expensive. Pearl of Infinite Bleakness lasts for 16 seconds more. I can't even remember what that is. I don't even entirely know what that is. Someone remind me what the Pearl of Infinite Bleakness is. Sounds edgy. Thinking Dark Elves. Hand of Glory upgraded. It's removed the plus 24% speed effect, but it now gives much bigger reload skill effect. Okay. I mean, fair enough, because people didn't use it for the speed, they used it for the reload skill, if it was used at all. So, you may as well just go all in with the reload skill. Stone Shaper, from 10 armor to 15 armor. Dragon Slayer's Fang from 18 armor to 23. Mask of Heavens from 18 to 23. Warp Shard armor, -18 armor to -23 armor. Dark Mail from plus 24 armor to plus 30 armor. And from plus 22 magic resistance to plus 25 magic resistance. What I'm noticing is a lot of these changes across the board seem to be encouraging like items and spells in support being better, but stats from chevrons being more offensive. So they've got sort of, I don't know, buffs and abilities dragging games out longer, but the other one's making it shorter? Like, it's weird. It's a weird conflict, but it's odd. Yeah, looking forward to seeing exactly how this is going to play out. Anyway, so Helm of Many Eyes from +6 to +7. Totem of Rust from -6 to -7. Strength of the Land 1 from 6 armor to 7. 2 from 12 to 15. 3 from 18 to 23. And 4 from 18 to 23 armor. Strength of the Land, I'm not entirely sure what this is, actually. I'm not sure what that is. And Twisted Flesh, I'm not entirely sure about that either. I can't know what these two are. Let me know. There's a billion abilities in this game, guys. Leave me alone. So anyway, +6. Okay, just more armor on all the support things. Ruinous Flesh, cool. There's a bunch of stuff here. Just bigger buffs and debuffs for all the items by the looks of it. So, I mean, it makes sense. They should have a bit more of an impact. Blood Greed, activation condition changed to in melee. Removed speed bonus, increased leadership bonus from +12 to +15. So this is the Gorbals thing, I believe. So yeah, now they have to be melee to do it, and it doesn't add a speed bonus because of course they're in melee anyway. So fine. Tretch's Raiders is now always active and targets other units that are winning combat. Quicksilver Shot changed to common ability, reduced cost from 164 to 82. Shield Chakra reduced effect range from 40 to 30 meters. Added max 3 uses. Which, yeah, fair enough. That's the Shield Chakra is obviously the Legion of Chakra's missile resist thing. That was kind of crazy. So that's cool. And the Potion of Shiroi, max 4 uses. That, again, is really good. Just Techless being able to have, like, infinite healing, essentially, is what that was. Obviously, there's a healing cap, I know, but it gives damage resistance and stuff as well. So you could literally, even if you're on full health, you could just pop the Potion of Shiroi and charge into combat, you know, knowing that you'd essentially have twice as many hit points. Because you'd be negating basically half the damage. So it is silly. So yeah, max 4 uses makes a lot of sense. Right, so, and then modders. Okay, there's modding stuff happening. I'm not even going to talk about it. Guys, that is it. Okay, I've gone through all the changes now. But my god, this patch. There is so much stuff changed. Brilliant news, though, for all foot characters. Because they've finally gone, yeah, you know, stuff on foot sucks. And they've made it all cheaper, which I think is brilliant. And, honestly, that is a highlight for me. That's a highlight for me, completely. And just a lot of little changes, which I think we'll see add up. But there's some good stuff in there, for sure. But, very upset about Soulfire. So, guys, if you enjoyed this hour and a half, then, yeah, I'll see you in the next one, alright? Comment, like, subscribe. You do all the YouTube stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day, guys.